Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. Are we witnessing the end of the middle class, not just in America, but also globally? In this video, I'm going to cover important issues pertaining to the country, the economy, as well as your money. And I want you to understand what is happening so you can prepare for your financial future. Folks, it's really important to know what's going on so that we can plan for the future. And that's what I'm going to dig into in this important episode of Ignition Time. Here's brand new reporting from Bloomberg. And the headline reads, "Millions are tumbling out of the global middle class in a historic setback." Individuals who had worked for decades to escape the cycle of poverty, which you see on your screen, to escape the cycle of poverty and get into the middle class, have now found as a direct result of the pandemic that they are more dependent on stimulus checks, that they are more dependent on unemployment benefits than they had ever thought possible. In fact, never in their lives did these individuals think that they would be depending on the government for a stimulus check or unemployment benefits. Here's an article from the Pew Research Center, and the headline reads, "The pandemic stalls growth in the global middle class, pushing poverty up sharply." And folks, this is a trend that is happening globally. Advanced economies like the United States, like the United Kingdom, also saw an increase in poverty and a reduction in the middle class and a reduction in living standards. Let's take a look at this image on your screen from the Pew Research Center. The pandemic curbed growth globally for the middle class and it increased poverty sharply in 2020. The number of high income earners reduced, upper middle income earners reduced. The number of poor individuals increased substantially, as you can see on this image on your screen. I want our viewers and subscribers to know that in some parts of the world, people live on less than $2 a day. Yes, you heard that right. People live on less than $2 a day. Here's another image on your screen. Globally, most individuals are either poor or low income, and the pandemic made things much worse for them in 2020. Take a look at the post-pandemic estimate, which is shown in that green color, the darker green color. High income individuals, a reduction. Upper income, middle income individuals, a reduction. Low income individuals, almost the same, and poor individuals saw an increase. Again, this is shocking information that essentially signifies that upper income individuals essentially saw a reduction in their net worth, but the lowest and the lowest income individuals, the most vulnerable among us, actually saw their financial situation get much worse. And what the Pew Research Center does not show is that the billionaires and the trillionaires got even richer than they were prior to the pandemic. In fact, the richest individuals in their country saw their wealth increase by trillions of dollars. They actually saw their net worth increase by 35% in the year 2020 because there was a demand for their goods and their services and their products. Let's contrast all of this with what happened from 2011 through 2019 before the pandemic. This chart on your screen shows you that the global middle class expanded rapidly from 2011 to 2019. Things were starting to improve. Things were starting to get better globally, not just in the United States of America, but globally, the middle class was expanding. More people were able to afford more things. They were able to decorate their homes. They were able to buy televisions. They were able to, buy nice cars. But in 2020, all of that changed, reversing decades of progress for the middle class. Take a look at this chart on your screen and you'll see how the high income earners and the upper middle income earners and the middle income earners actually grew from 2011 to 2019. Low income earners started to do better, the poor started to do better, and then everything was destroyed in 2020. And how did all of this play out globally? Folks, not only has there been a disproportionate impact within the United States of America, there's been a disproportionate impact across the world. Different countries have struggled to different extents. Let's talk about our country for a second. You know that individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality were impacted the most. You know that individuals who are dependent on Social Security and related benefits are still waiting in many cases for their stimulus checks. Let's take a look at this chart on your screen, which shows you that globally, the impact is quite devastating. South Asia is estimated to have experienced the largest decrease in the middle class and the greatest increase in poverty due to the pandemic in 2020. Now, take a look at this chart, which is extremely shocking. Let's look at what happened to poor individuals, middle income individuals, and high income individuals in countries. Let's take a look at advanced economies. You'll see that there was an impact on poverty. Middle income individuals actually did better in advanced economies, presumably because of all of the stimulus. But globally, let's take a look at Africa, for example. Poverty increased substantially. Let's take a look at South Asia. Countries like India, poverty increased substantially, and a substantial reduction in the middle class. But again, let's move up and let's take a look at advanced economies. You'll see that there was an impact on the poor, but middle income individuals did better because of the stimulus, and high income individuals saw a reduction in their net worth. These are again global trends. This doesn't take into consideration how the billionaires and trillionaires did. Now let's take a look at an incredible graphic from the Bloomberg article that I mentioned earlier. By the way, you'll get a link to all of our resources in the description section below. Let's show you this image on your screen that shows you the global GDP shortfall. In other words, globally, how our country is doing. Now, the bright yellow color represents emerging economies, South America and other parts of the world. And the lighter colors represent the advanced economies like the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and parts of Europe. You'll actually notice when you take a closer look at this image on your screen that there's a significant struggle for emerging economies, and they'll find it much harder to get back to the pre-pandemic level of growth. In other words, pre-pandemic, emerging economies had a growing middle class, had the poor who were actually able to escape the cycle of poverty and get into the middle class, which, by the way, can take decades, in many cases generations. And so they had worked hard to achieve that, and a lot of that has been wiped out, and it'll probably take several decades for that to come back to where things were pre-pandemic, because other countries don't have the ability to make it rain money on their residents. Folks, it has been raining money for individuals in the United States of America, but other emerging countries like India, like South America, like the Philippines, other emerging countries don't have the luxury of sending money to their residents. Let's take a look at this chart from Maruti Suzuki, which is an automaker in India, and you'll start to see that from December 2019, as we move from the left to the right, what happened was that the car sales actually started to decline significantly. In fact, this chart that you see on your screen is a telling sign of how much countries like India are struggling. Now, this is a chart that represents sales from Maruti Suzuki, which is an automaker in India. And you'll see that sales were growing just before the lockdown happened. There was a long lockdown in India, and April and June, it was just horrific. And then there was a post-lockdown surge. There was a post-lockdown rebound, if you will, in car sales. And then since then, car sales have been very weak, and people simply aren't buying cars. This is a devastating indicator of how several economies in South Asia are doing, and this indicates that the middle class is shrinking, not just in America, but also globally. And what's happening in Brazil is that the price of beef is increasing. So people are not eating beef and instead buying more chicken and eggs. Here's a chart on your screen that shows you that as beef prices rise, Brazilians are consuming more chicken and more eggs. The line in black represents beef, and the line in blue represents chicken. The line in red represents eggs. Individuals are consuming more chicken and eggs and are not eating beef because the price of beef has gone up across Brazil. Finally, let's take a look at tourism in Bangkok, because certain parts of the world are entirely dependent on tourism. In fact, certain parts of our country, Nevada, for instance, Las Vegas, largely dependent on tourism. Let's take a look at the number of tourists visiting Bangkok. Let's show you this chart on your screen. Fewer nights in Bangkok. The black portion represents individuals visiting Thailand, and the blue portion represents the forecast from the Bank of Thailand. Take a look at how the trends were continuously going up every year, and take a look at the massive, unbelievable decline as a direct result of the pandemic. Now, the Bank of Thailand is forecasting that people will return, but it could take a few years to get back to pre-pandemic levels, which directly impacts the middle class in Bangkok, because the entire economy for Bangkok is built around tourism. That's it, everyone. That was the impact, the crushing impact of the pandemic on the middle class, not just in our country. I have done extensive videos about that, but also globally. This tells us that things are much worse in some parts of the world, which is horrific, which is sad, which is extremely unfortunate. But this is a world that we live in, and this is why you come to Ignition Time. I will always present you with the truth wherever the truth might take us. This channel is about the country, the economy, as well as our money. But in this video, I wanted to give our viewers not just a national dimension, but a global dimension to what's going on across the world. Thank you so much for watching. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.